Welcome to Capes and Monsters, your nerd culture podcast and YouTube dedicated to comic book movies, horror movies, and just about everything else in between. And welcome everyone to an episode of Capes and Monsters, a very special episode because this is the first time that we do anything video related. This has been a podcast for almost a year now, and I've had a couple people along the way ask, why don't you do videos, why don't you do YouTube? And I've thought about it here and there, but I always liked my laziness. And
the comfort.
And the comfort of not having to be on camera. But, there's been a lot of interest, so I figured why not? Hence, this is where we are. I'm also in a robe because I'm at my most comfy self because we're at home. And today I have my lovely wife, Maya. My lovely wife, Maya, with me here today.
Hello.
Be prepared for a little awkwardness just because it's the first time we do video.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, to like here, to like here, to like there.
Thanks for bearing with us. And for those of you that are still listening through the podcast, I'm looking at my computer as if they can see me. Thank you, because I'm going to still be doing both. This audio is going to go onto the podcast, and that way it reaches a video audience and a podcast audience, all the same.
Or it'll just branching off into like other platforms. So.
And thanks to everyone for joining us along for the ride. I'm very much appreciative. The podcast has been a lot of fun, and I'm just really grateful for everyone that's been tuning out. So thank you again for that. And let's get to the topic of today's talk. The latest entry in the MCU, Captain Marvel. Now, this film has had a lot of hype and controversy all over the place. It's been a very highly anticipated film. There's been a lot of talk about the film, about the main actress, Brie Larson. But I do want to stay away from the controversy because I'm not here to talk about who said what or who's trolling who or any of that. I'm just here to discuss a film.
I'm here for that.
We're just here to discuss a film that we enjoyed. And that being said, I did enjoy this movie. I personally don't think it was anything amazing, but it was nowhere near terrible. And I feel there's been a lot of exaggerations on both sides. Yeah. But it was a solidly entertaining film for me. How did you feel about it?
I mean, only because people have been asking me, from 1 through 10, what did you rate this movie? Yesterday, I think, I'm like, what did I rate it? No. I rate it an 8. I mean, I'm not a person who, nitpicks movies or,
That's true. You're pretty easygoing for the most part.
Yeah. As long as, I'm entertained or you make me laugh a couple times, I'm, solid. So, yeah, I give it an 8. There was some parts where I was taken out of the movie for a little bit, but then, I was brought back with the cat.
Goose.
So, yeah. I liked it. It was fine.
Yeah, I liked it too. And just a heads up, this conversation that we're going to have, that's...
Did you just fix your contact right now?
No, did it go everywhere?
I think you did that facing, so your eyes all twitching.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, anyways.
So, lots of spoilers. Just a heads up, I want to give everyone a spoiler alert. Now, this episode will be heavy on the spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, press pause and come back when you do. Unless you just want to watch this without watching the movie.
My brother does that. He watches a lot of, people who review. Before
watching the movie. Well, then more respect to you, and thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
So, much talked about movie, and much talked about actress Brie Larson. Now, just like my opinion of the film, I thought she did a solid job. It wasn't anything but it wasn't bad. She just had more of a stoic character, is all I could say. But I thought she did a solid job. She was pretty badass too.
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw in the trailers, from what I saw in the movie, it was different. She smiled. She had a good time.
She smiled.
From what I thought in the trailer, I thought, she was going to be more soldier and but nah, everyone has different humor. Her humor is just drier than,
Yeah, there was less humor intended in the trailers, but in the movie there's some stuff in there. And speaking of humor, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. I mean, I love the fact that we got such a different version of him. He was younger, he was joyful, he was cracking jokes. Mm-hmm. It was more the Sam Jackson that we're kind of used to, I guess you could say. And in his real life personality.
Yeah.
So to see the progression of who his character becomes in the mainstay MCU right now, with all serious and gruff, a director. It makes sense.
Right.
So, but to see him in a different light was very refreshing.
I also didn't know that Captain Marvel was going to be the movie where we found out how Nick Fury lost his eye. Mm-hmm. Not till like, you know, when we were at the theater, you told me like, oh yeah, we're supposed to like find out. I'm like, oh no way. So like there's a couple times where they tease it, like you think like, you know, there's a moment where you think he loses his eye, and then like, no, he's fine. Another part, you're like,
they teased it really well. No.
So it's funny, but
and we actually find out that it was through Goose the cat. He scratches his eye.
Out of all, like,
the last time he trusted someone.
Yeah, and it was so innocent too. So yeah.
And speaking of Goose, was that your favorite character in the movie?
Yes.
Goose was definitely
some cats.
Yeah, he was definitely a scene stealer.
Squirting the feline.
Yeah, I had a great time with him, and the fact that he was also an alien called a Furkle. I'll look it up and let you know. I forgot the exact name right now. Just added to it, you know, having him be an alien. Now, speaking of aliens, Talos, what's presented to be our major villain, played by Ben Mendelsohn. Who knew that he was going to be the character I rooted for the most in the movie?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to get into the story a little bit more later on, but, you know, basically the good guys are the villains, and the villains were actually the good guys all along with the Kree and the Skrull alien war that's been going on. So what we see as our main villain ends up being a refugee just trying to get his family somewhere safe. And I rooted for him so hard. I thought he brought depth to the character, and I thought it was rad.
Yeah. And he was funny, and yeah. Everything.
And then we also had the amazing Jude Law as Jan Rog. I just want to see more of him, and I loved, from a film perspective, the twist, because he's presented as a mentor, and we're used to seeing him in such a good guy role, and to have him flip and be the villain was all the more exciting, I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, his crew had Gemma Chan as Minerva, who was solid, and I read somewhere, if I remember correctly, that she and Carol actually have like a backstory, and when she says like, "Oh, I never liked you," no, there's some there's some tension, so I don't know if they are going to go that route in the future, where they were once they had romantic inclinations or not.
That's true, I caught that. Like,
right?
That she didn't like her.
So whether or not they'd choose to go in that route, they've already kind of rooted the seeds for it. And we also had Korath and Ronan come back from Guardians of the Galaxy. Super great to see them again. I did want to see more of Ronan. I feel like he only had a cameo, and I was really... because he was such a great villain in Guardians, and I felt he was defeated too easily, so I was really excited to see more of him.
Yeah.
Didn't get to see enough. That's my nitpick.
What was that?
I had food earlier. Sorry, guys. And then, speaking of people coming back, Clark Gregg, Phil Coulson. Not too much of a role, but it was enough to keep the whole timeline going, and it was cool to see him once more. Now, speaking of the story that we were discussing a little bit earlier, this is a different film in terms of it's a MCU origin movie where you're right in the middle of the story. She already has her powers, and we kind of, like I said, we start in the middle, and there's a different pacing to it. Now, for me, because the MCU has done such a great job of establishing these characters and introducing them and setting them up here and having their own movies there, you're kind of always privy to what character's doing what, or their origin story starts at the beginning, so you start with them. So to have it start here in the middle, I thought was a very interesting choice. And on paper, I really like it, but it took me a while to get invested into the film. Actually, the story took a while to get the ball rolling. And I didn't get really invested towards the back half. But then by then I was entirely entertained. But it just took me a while personally. Like, how did you feel on, starting in the middle, so to speak?
I didn't actually mind how they started it. I was able to follow the story okay. And I feel like the pacing was fine. Yes, there were some parts where, it was a little slow. And then there was music choices that would take me out of the movie. My top two were like the TLC when they were like driving. Yeah. I just feel like the transition was weird. And then when one of the main fights where they put in No Doubt.
Yeah,
I'm Just a Girl.
That took me out too.
I was hoping it was maybe like a remix version, but nope, it wasn't. So it made no sense.
I get why it was added, the 90s girl
Great
power.
Girl, yeah,
but it just because the sequence up leading to that hadn't, it just felt out of place and awkwardly placed.
So I feel like,
Yeah.
So, and
like,
I know I'm not the only one that feels like that towards that song.
And I was telling Maya, like, the easily way that they could have gone around that is because this sequence happens toward the end of the film. We're in the refugee spaceship. They have an pinball machine up there. They have some stuff from Earth. They could have easily had some sort of jukebox that gets knocked over during the fight and plays a song. That way it would have felt less out of place.
Yeah, or like go change different songs.
Yeah, exactly. That could have been a running gag too, and incorporate a little more in the 90s, because that was one of my issues, unfortunately. The fact that we had a movie set in the 90s and I felt it wasn't taken advantage of at all. Like, the only references we got were her crashing into Blockbuster, maybe 4 songs in the entire film, and 2 computer use with slow internet.
There was Cars.
I just wanted to be more embraced into the 90s, and I felt it really lacked that and didn't take advantage of it.
I don't think it was that bad.
Well, I mean, here's what I compare it to. For example, some of the X-Men films, like First Class, that feels like the 60s.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the other films, the Future Past, they felt very 70s, and, Apocalypse, 80s. Like, you felt those time periods. And with this, it was, like, background references. Like, it was, the 90s played too much of a background role. It should have been at the forefront. That's my nitpick. But there was a lot to enjoy from the film as well. Maya, what were some of
my favorite parts of the movie?
Yeah, what were yours?
Aside from, like, honestly, because, Goose, the cat, does steal every scene he's in. So anything he was in, anything Nick Fury was in, I feel like, for me, like, when Carol starts to realize who she was, like, so basically, like, from the middle of the movie, like, to the end, there was so many parts within that time frame that I was like, that part. So I can't really pick, but so I'd probably just say, like, the last half of the movie.
The last half of the movie, yeah. One of my favorite parts, unfortunately you missed it, was the opening credits. Let me do that again. The tribute to Stan Lee and his cameos. I thought that was just really nice.
And he had a cameo in the movie, which is really nice too.
Yeah. Just getting a chance to see him again was really nice. So
yeah.
Going later into the film, I think one of my favorite sequences was when Carol's kidnapped by the Skrulls and they're going through her memories. And first off, I thought that was a really cool Easter egg, because in the comics, some of the Skrulls are psychic. So to add the whole memory sequence was a interesting nod to it. And then her breaking out and trying to escape was incredibly badass, even with, her powers being guarded. Her going Super Saiyan at the end was incredibly badass. The dog fight with the jets going everywhere reminded me a lot of Star Wars. That was incredibly sick.
A couple parts where I'm like, oh, Star Wars.
So that whole sequence was really cool. Nick Fury was dope. Goose was awesome. The Tesseract. Goose swallows the Tesseract.
Willingly.
Speaking of which, so at first I saw this as a timeline issue, or just kind of a plot hole, I guess you could say. So the last time we saw the Tesseract in the timeline, Howard Stark retrieves it towards the end of the events of Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, with this taking place in the 90s, it means at some point... Yeah, my contacts are twitching. I'm so sorry, guys. Sorry. I'm fixing them right now.
Okay.
Dr. Lawson, she gets it, and then we find out Goose swallows it, gives it to Fury, and, that picks up from Avengers. So the disconnect between how to go from hair... Sorry, my eyes. The disconnect...
Eye contact?
The solution? I might... Hold on. No, I think I'll be all right. So Howard... To Dr. Lawson, Howard was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. She was working for Project Pegasus, which was involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. She could have easily borrowed it or stolen it for all we know.
Yeah.
So, but anywho, now I think my overall favorite part of the movie was the mid-credit scene. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the movie. It's what got me the most hyped. We're coming off of Infinity War. Captain America, Black Widow, they're there. Ruffalo, not Hulk. I was super excited.
It has nothing to do with the movie.
It has everything to do with the movie. It is a part of the movie. Still, Carol is in the sequence.
Barely. for like 2 seconds.
They're working on the pager that Fury beeps Captain Marvel with, that we saw at the end of Infinity War. And in this film, you know, she shows us that she tampers with it to give it to him. And I just can't stop twitching my eyes. So they find out that the signal stopped and they can't figure out why. And they're trying to resend the signal. And then Captain Marvel shows up. Where's Fury? So
She doesn't say it that deep.
where's Fury? She doesn't say that deep. But so it got me all excited. And interestingly enough, I started thinking about this now. There's some images online that people have been noticing where in the Endgame trailers, somebody has been edited out. Insert picture here.
Yes.
That has to be Captain Marvel. It has to be Carol because it looks like this is happening right at the beginning of the movie. So it would make sense for her to be with them, and that's why there's a missing character in these trailers. It's Carol Danvers.
Yeah. I believe it. It kind of does look edited.
Yeah, it does. It does. Some people were thinking it was Hawkeye, but I think they find Hawkeye later, which I'm so excited to see as Ronan. Anywho, lots of hype for Endgame. We enjoyed Captain Marvel. Let me know if you enjoyed it too, and where does this movie fall into your rankings? Now, for me personally...
Yeah, let me see your list.
No, don't look at my list.
Let me see
It's
your
a work in progress. No.
Okay, but what movies is below Captain Marvel?
Below Captain Marvel would be like Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World. It's in the lower middle, but to me, Marvel has...
How many movies are there? 21?
They're 21. To me, but the MCU has never made... They've all been 7s and above.
Yeah.
Like, there's always been something entertaining about them. Winter Soldier over here is a 10. No, because it's still a work in progress.
Okay, fine.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate you watching this. Podcast listeners, I really appreciate you sticking with me and listening throughout this journey. Like I said, it's been nearly a year. If not a year. Yeah, because it was Black Panther.
February.
Yeah.
Last year.
So thank you again for tuning in. I'm really appreciative. I wouldn't be doing this without you guys. So thank you for that. Maya, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having here with me at home. And we'll catch you guys next time. If everything works out, it'll be an episode on Us, the highly anticipated follow-up to Jordan Peele's Get Out. So it'll be horror-themed, and you guys know where to find us. Capes and Monsters, all one word. iTunes, Spreaker, hashtag for Instagram. We'll catch you guys next time.